Hey guys, what's up? Unrested back with another video. Really quick before we get started, I want to apologize for last week's sound quality. It was total garbage, and you guys called that out. I have researched more about how to level my sound in OBS, so going forward, I'm hoping from today I have both sound for myself and the video that I react to set at the same level. I've read a bunch of instructions on how to do this and equalize everything. So hopefully from today. But I am listening. I am taking constructive criticism, and I thank you for any of those comments that help me improve my videos. Let's move forward with today's video about a YouTuber known as Mr. Japan. I've watched Mr. Japan for quite some time, and I like what he does. It's a really interesting take from a native Japanese person talking about videos he sees from Japan, reactions to gaijin talking about Japan, foreigners talking about Japan, and I guess like things like internet memes and all other types of react videos. I have written to him before in the comments to ask for a collab. He's never responded. He probably is just like, who is this rando on the internet? I totally understand. I'm like nobody on YouTube. So nonetheless, do after you watch this, please check out his channel, Mr. Japan. He's only got like close to 8,000 subscribers, so I would like to send more subs his way. He makes really great stuff. Why I'm stopping on this video to talk about is I'm kind of shocked. I didn't know he had this kind of past where he was really angry at Japan. And once I started to listen to this, I stopped the video immediately and was like, I need to react live to this because I didn't expect this to come from him. The first time you listen to Mr. Japan talk, he comes across as a guy who's not really affected by anything. Like nothing like gets him super pissed off or super offended. It's kind of like water off a duck's back when it comes to like insults and stuff like that. Um, he he really seems to roll with the punches when people talk trash about him or Japan. So when I heard this, I was kind of like, whoa, this is pretty amazing that he comes from this kind of background, pushed through it, and has made strives on his channel to this very day. Let's get into it.
I used to hate Japan, not because I was selfish, but because Japan hated me first. For 6 years, I was bullied every day. In high school, I became a hikikomori. I stopped going to school.
Okay, I'm just gonna stop it right there. For those of you for like the first time on on my channel, you may have never heard the word hikikomori. I've seen this often related to someone being a NEET, which means not in education or training. There's something else on there in the definition of NEET. They are not the same thing. Someone who is a NEET is just someone who's finished training or education or college or a job has been laid off and doesn't know where to go with their life. A hikikomori literally means to pull inside. Like it literally translates to that. But its best English translation would be a recluse or a shut in, someone who no longer goes outside and interacts daily with any kind of social aspect to their life. And I think some people tell me this sometimes. They're like, that's like me, I'm hikikomori. No, I don't think you truly understand it. There's someone like myself too. I'm a homebody, right? So when it comes to the weekend, I would much rather sit at home and play video games than go out to like a bar or a club or, you know, the most social thing I've done recently is go onto the Renaissance Fair. That was really exhausting for me socially and stimulation wise as far as ADHD is concerned. Hence, I tend to be a homebody. That's not the same as a hikikomori. The hikikomori in Japan is so much of a shut in that they often never leave their room inside their house, and their parents have to bring food to their door, which they then consume, leave outside, and the parents collect the tray and hope one day that child will leave. This, like he said, it happened for him in high school. It most times does seem to happen when kids are younger because you're much more vulnerable as far as emotion and insults are concerned. We're going to find out, of course, what his specific issue was, but it can also happen from bullying or harassment at work too, and people end up, leaving their job or quitting and never leaving their room again. It's gotten so bad in Japan that there's, I think, according to this is a white page report from the government, if I am correct, there's nearly 100,000 plus shut-ins at this point that are between the ages of high school age, which would be, I think, in Japan about like 14, 13, on up to like 35, which is like the most common age. It's mostly males. But then recently there's been a new word, and I always forget this translation. I'm forgetting it now, but there's a new word for 50 plus year old hikikomori. And it's a scary situation because at 50 plus, if they're still living with their parents, the parents are no longer able to take care of them. The parents are like in their 80s and 90s and often need to be taken care of by the hikikomori, which sometimes ends up happening. The roles are reversed. And because the hikikomoris never learn to gradually evolve in a social situation, they get frustrated, they get annoyed, they don't reach out for help, and there's been times where they've, come into conflict with their own parents, and there's been things like lives ended, abuse of the elderly. It's gotten bad. And it's something Japan doesn't really do much about. There are third party companies that have a hikikomori solution, which they send someone to the house who's the equivalent to like a social worker who will talk to them through the door of their room and try to get them step by step to re enter society. But there's no government department that tries to cover this massive social issue in Japan. I'm glad he did escape this. I'm really happy to hear that.
I wasn't dreaming of America. I just needed to get out of Japan. So at 20, I decided to go to the States. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. It wasn't courage, it was survival. Back then, I truly felt like I didn't belong in Japan. This was personal, and still is.
I kind of had the reverse feeling when I went to Japan. Like, I don't hate America at all. I actually really love America. Um, I love Americans. I'm not anti my country. I'm not the type of person who's like, well, I hate it here. Everything's so messed up. Yeah, there's messed up stuff in every country. Every country's got its faults. But I did always kind of feel like the odd one out. Like, I always felt like a stranger in most situations. Now, at my age, I've obviously become very comfortable with that. I don't really care. But I did really feel like in my early 20s that I was like a weirdo everywhere, every job I worked, etc. And so that was one of the issues that did kind of push me to leave America and try out Japan and just see how I was going to fit in there. And I was a weirdo there too, but I kind of expected it because I had researched what Japan was like. And it was like, no matter if you have tattoos or, you're wear black all the time or whatever, you're going to be looked at as a weirdo just as much as the normal everyday preppy person with blonde hair and blue eyes. So everybody's just a weirdo to them out there sometimes. It's a sort of a certain level of xenophobia where you'll get stared at all the time. So after I got there, I don't know, I kind of just got over it. I mean, it's something that he's obviously dealing with too in his early 20s. And it's just a vice versa situation. So I'm really interested to hear like how this progressed.
When I was in junior high school, every day felt like a nightmare.
Oof.
I was bullied constantly, not just teased, but seriously harassed.
Yeah, he's not joking, dude. Like harassment and bullying in Japan gets bad enough that there's been stories of harassment where the bullies coax a person into, deleting themselves. Is the best way I can put it without getting the video banned on Japan. So that is a problem that has happened multiple times at different high schools and stuff like that. And when called out by the media or the parents or the victim of whoever did whatever, it's kind of been ignored. There's been principals who've answered like, well, they should have been more mature and not done that. And you're just like, what are you talking about? You're the adult in the situation. They are literally still a child because this happened in high school or middle school. You're supposed to be the adult who steps in and stops this kind of stuff from happening. What are you talking about? They should have been more mature. You're the most mature person in this situation and you should have intervened. There's been times where the school's been called, been told this is going on, been reported to by parents, like all kinds of stuff, and they still never did anything until finally some sort of deletion happened where it became a media sensation, was found out everywhere, and the school gets in big trouble. It's sad. It's kind of gotten more under control now. Like there are more regulations in place. There is more prosecution of people doing stuff like this, and there is a lot of honor loss by the people who do this and the family they are connected to, which is good. I like to see Japan progress in this manner because it'll really stop people from, you know, keeping up the harassment and bullying. But during his time, none of this existed. While he was in high school, none of this kind of stuff would happen. It would rarely even get mentioned in the newspaper or anything like this. So he probably really suffered. And it's not small time bullying like calling you names and stuff like that. It's like straight up beat up and told to end oneself.
It was painful. It was isolating. I had no one to talk to, no one to turn to. Even the teachers didn't help that much. They saw what was happening, but they just looked the other way. I felt invisible, or worse, like I didn't matter at all. By the time I got to high school, I couldn't take it anymore. I shut down. I stopped going to school. I became hikikomori. Hikikomori, right? I stayed in my room, disconnected from the world. I wasn't lazy. I was broken. Only things that gave me comfort were anime and Japanese RPG at the time. I escaped into those stories because real life hurt too much.
Yeah, so he was the most extreme example. Like I said, there are certain hikikomori where like they just shut themselves inside their apartment, even though they live alone, and obviously they live off of stuff like Uber Eats and stuff like that. There's even a famous story of a hikikomori who shut himself into his apartment and didn't leave, and he became a day trader and became like a multi-millionaire, which is kind of amazing. And obviously, he was able to break out of that shell when people respected him as a millionaire. But in his situation, it's the most extreme, where not only is he living with his parents, but he's shut himself inside of his own room and isn't even reacting with his own parents or socializing with his own parents. It's a really rough situation, and Japan is very, very, very far behind when it comes to addressing mental health.
That was my word for years. High school. Fiction was more real to me than anything outside. At 20, something in me snapped. I didn't know what to do with my life, but I knew I couldn't stay in Japan anymore. So I made a decision to leave. I chose America. But let me be clear, guys. It wasn't a dream. I wasn't excited. I was scared. I didn't speak a word of English. Nothing, guys. Nothing. I didn't know anyone. I didn't know what was waiting for me in the States, California. But I had to go because staying in Japan felt like slowly dying.
This is pretty amazing. Like, think about the bravery of this guy. Like, me going to Japan was a bit scary too. I didn't really speak much Japanese. On top of it, I studied the wrong Japanese because I went to Osaka, which had a different dialect, and all the suffixes were different from everything I had tried to study in books before I went there. So, yeah, me too. I couldn't communicate. But Japan is very safe, Japan is very forgiving, and Japanese people are very polite and nice, even when you mess stuff up with the language. I love America, but we're definitely not the same when it comes to being patient, being super polite, and being forgiving if you don't know the language. So this guy really, this is a hardcore story. Like, he went from not socializing at all to going to another country where he couldn't speak the language and then trying to socialize. Like, that's from 0 to 100. I recently learned that in my Japanese lesson. Zero ka hyaku speed ita. Like, that's the equivalent to going from 0 to 100. Like, there's no in between. There's no gray area. He really, really put himself in a pretty extreme situation from both angles.
The first day in the States, I cried. I didn't know how to use a shower at my homestay. I couldn't ask for help. I just sat there, feeling helpless, wondering if I made the worst mistake of my life.
Think about that. I totally understand what he means too, because in Japan, to turn on the hot water for your shower, it talks to you in Japanese and tells you, like, this is going to heat up. This is going to set it to this level. It's now set at this level. Go ahead and take a shower. But it's telling you all that in Japanese, and every single button on the heater is in kanji. And I remember feeling the same way. You just kind of messed with it until you figured it out. But you're just you're on your own. You can't call home and be like, "Mom, Dad, I don't know how to do this. Do you guys know about how to start the shower?" Because there's no safety net. You are on your own to figure everything out. They're not going to help you with your taxes. They're not going to help you with finding a job and interviewing in Japanese. Same thing for this guy. And man, it's rough, but I will say it builds a lot of confidence. It builds a lot of confidence to throw yourself into a situation like that. And I have a feeling this is kind of what happened with him and why he became a YouTuber after.
On the second day, I had to take the bus. I couldn't understand the signs, the driver, anything. Of course, I was lost.
Sorry to stop it so quick again. My wife told me the same thing. She lived in America for about 8 months. This was like 2 years before I met her, and she said taking the bus was so scary because even when she would ask in English, like, is this bus going to this area? They'd be like, I don't understand your English, just get on. And then she said, like, then I couldn't understand, like, if I was going to the right place. I couldn't ask other people on the bus. Like, people would talk to me so fast that I couldn't understand it. They couldn't understand my English, even though I tried to speak English the whole time. She said it was really scary to take the bus. Lucky for her, she met another Japanese friend there who was taking the bus to the same school she was going to learn English. And that Japanese friend, still a friend of our family to this day, was much more advanced with her English and could help her. But I mean, this guy's on his own.
But deep down, I told myself, you already left Japan. You can't turn back now. Too late. And then something unexpected happened. I met my first English teacher. He was kind, patient, and something about her teaching style just worked for me. Truly, it clicked. For the first time in my life, I felt like someone believed in me.
Oh, that's awesome. That's good to hear. I did hear he switched from he to she, though. Dang it, Japan. I always talk about this how Japanese people will constantly switch between he and she. It's like very hard for them. I love you, Mr. Japan, but same thing, switching between he and she. Okay, so that's great. That's really nice to hear. I will say, right away, yeah, like try to find a teacher, try to find a tutor. I've had different tutors and different people help me and teach me in Japan. There was this group of old ladies called the Obachan Club at Okat Station that would teach you free Japanese lessons. And they were like, 50 plus. I don't really think that's super old, but they chose the name of their own club. I didn't name this club. And they would just teach free Japanese, and you'd sit down with them. They were super patient. They'd go real slow with you. They knew a slight bit of English if you were just starting. The one thing I did find they couldn't do though is when I'd ask them grammar questions, I'd be like, "Why does this always change to this?" They'd be like, "Oh, good question." Like they weren't, obviously licensed teachers who had a background in grammar and sentence structure, but they were just trying their best to teach us Japanese, and it was very nice and very polite. And it sounds like he found a person like this too, and this is great to hear.
Like I could do something, at least, after 3 months. I could speak some English. I was able to rent a small apartment. I bought a cheap car. And I started to think maybe I could actually live a life. Maybe this was my chance to start over. Then I fell in love with English. Learning it gave me confidence. Speaking it gave me freedom. And slowly, I started to enjoy expressing myself in a language that wasn't tied to the pain I felt growing up.
I've had multiple students, and this is mostly adult students, anywhere from the age of Mr. Japan here on up to elderly students, who've told me that they learned English because it let them express themselves the way they always wanted to. That Japanese and Japan just held them back. And a lot of times it's women too. They said, I learned this because if I speak this way in Japanese in Japan as a woman, it's frowned upon. But in English, I can be as strong with my words and as expressive as I want to. So I guess that says something about our language and maybe just Western style communication in general. But it sometimes, I don't know, I feel like the Japanese language is really beautiful. Obviously, kanji is super beautiful. I I do struggle to express feelings in Japanese, but I more add that up to just my speaking level to be garbage. I probably speak. I'm getting closer and closer to an adult level, but I'm probably like, you know, a seventh, eighth grader at this point. I take lessons every week. I have, it's totally immersion, totally in Japanese, but I do find when I'm looking for a translation of a feeling, it gets into some kind of like technical or like science term where I'm like, ooh, that doesn't really work right. Does Japan not actually have a word for this feeling? And I think, vice versa, the same can happen. For example, the word natsukashi, which means to like have the feeling of being nostalgic about something, doesn't translate either to English. I think this is just maybe a problem between the two. And just, I think I never really had a lot of conversations that evolved emotion in Japan because you don't talk that way at work, you don't talk that way in public, and you don't express deep emotion in everyday casual conversation. Anyway, let's continue.
That's why I love talking in English. It
What? Sorry, somehow I clicked CC.
gave me a new voice, new way to process everything I went through. And when I talk about what happened to me in Japan, we're not just making content, it's still personal. That's why I criticize Japan the way I do, because I lived it, because I still feel it, because deep down, part of me is still healing from it.
What a great story. It's like really inspiring. So yeah, he does have like very strong viewpoints. He does express them in English, and he does feel like a lot of freedom to be able to do that. And if he did do this in Japan, he would get a ton of hate. There's a lot of Japanese nationals who would, throw a lot of hate my way, even when I, try to tackle social issues in Japan, like, karoshi, death from overwork, hikikomori, recluses and shut-ins. Yeah, I would get the message would totally be in Japanese. It would be all in kanji, but it would be Japanese nationals who were very angry and very hurt by me tackling social issues in their country. Which I get it. I understand defending your country, but there's a point where you've got to stop, making excuses and defending and open up and realize there's something we need to tackle so there's a future for our youth. Because right now, there's not much of a future for the youth of Japan. There's not much of a youth of Japan for the future either. So this is great. This is really enlightening to hear. I didn't realize he had gone through all this. This is a recent video he did put up, and it showed up in my recommended, and I was like, oh my gosh, really? This is crazy that he went through like this kind of hardcore transition. So, my hat's off to him, and I hope you learned something about this video, that even people in Japan sometimes feel like they need to escape it and try to communicate in a different way because they want to express themselves more. Anyway, if you have any other questions or comments about this video today, please leave them in the comments down below or replies. And let me know what you'd like to see in a future FAQ. If you've just visited this channel for the first time, hi, I'm Unrested. I tackle all sorts of social issues, questions, and ideas about what it's like to move, live, work, survive, and take everything to Japan with your life, maybe your family and your job. And leave a comment down below, and maybe it'll turn into a future video. Until next time, I hope you have a great rest of the week.